I'm curious to see the introduction.
I know, yeah.
It's time for your weekly dose of the Three Amigos Isolation Podcast, Music, and Mental Health. Brought to you by Circles of Rhythm with your hosts, Alan Reese, John Pocock, and Julian LePage.
All right.
What? Sorry, I just like that was amazing.
There you go. That's about 25 minutes of work with my brother. I'm like, that was my brother's music, by the way. Pontex, Mario Lepage. Shout out to Pontex, the band. We'll put a link of my brother's band out there in the description. He's a producer and a musician, and he tours all over the place, specifically mostly in French. So he'll tour in Europe and stuff like that, and in Eastern Canada. And I'm like, hey, do you have a cool song I can use for our podcast intro? And he's like, does this work? And then I just boop, 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 put some stuff on, and there we go. So that's
I really like that. That was really nice. That was like a flashback of the last 6 weeks as well.
Exactly.
It's like a flashback. It was really cool. That was really good. I definitely agree though, because like you guys will see like Alan now, but Alan, you've definitely put on some size in 6 weeks. Just looking at that video.
I don't have my glasses on.
Just give us there you go.
I think it's the
oh, come on.
I think it's the camera. I think the camera just makes things look bigger. When I stand up with this camera, I'm 6'2".
I think you got your numbers mixed up.
Yeah.
Oh,
hey, Alan, do you wanna introduce our special guest for this week?
Yeah, I can introduce Andy Fennell. He's a wonderful gentleman who, what's he doing behind the scenes there? Andy Fennell is the owner of Gravity, the cafe in Inglewood, and I met Andy many years ago. We've rock climbed together, and we've spent a lot of time down at his cafe. Andy is a huge supporter of the music industry. He turned his single musician scenario in Gravity into a multi-instrumentalist. Weekly, every day of the week, there's some music at Gravity. So I'd just like to welcome Andy again, a friend, a supporter of the music industry, and a cafe owner, all the way from John's part of the world.
Not quite, but it's close.
Well,
I think that place is a bit more refined.
It's just
well, it's not. It's close here in Canadian terms, but as a person from the UK, from Newport to Birmingham, I'd probably say it's about 3 hours. That's a hell of a long way to drive in the UK. 3 hours.
We'd moan about that one.
Oh yeah.
Down the road, boys.
Yeah.
Oh mate, not today. No way. Not 3 hours doing this on the. Yeah.
Yeah, I took the train.
Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
To have you on.
Totally.
Nice to have you on.
I gave you the nickname Gravity Man on there. I've been to your coffee shop a few times, and always great service, always great food. You guys have excellent food.
Thank you.
Always lots of great beverages. My wife Danielle, we went there and she said, Julian, this is the best place I've had the best decaf latte ever. So that's pretty good.
You say you don't let her out very often then.
You know, honestly, like she really loves her coffee. She's a coffee snob, and that's a good thing. You know what I mean? And so, it was really good. It was late at night, and she wanted a latte. It was like it was close to 11, close to close. What time do you guys close usually?
10, but obviously not now.
Yeah,
Things are a bit different now, but yeah.
Yeah, so it was late at night and she didn't want to have a coffee, you know, that late at night, but she wanted to taste the coffee. So she went with the decaf, which was delicious.
Good.
What's I have a question. So I got a friend, a good friend of mine. He a number of years ago, he really enjoyed going into coffee houses,
Hmm.
and he said to his wife, I really want to own my own coffee shop. And she said, before you go into any like rash decision, or, do your research, like,
Mm.
speak to the managers. So he did. He spoke to everybody. And after about 6 months, he came to the realization that he just likes to sit in a coffee shop. So how did you get into having a kind of a coffee shop stroke? You serve liquor as well, don't you? And
Yep.
and the music, how did that all come to be?
Blind ignorance, I think.
Did you say blind or blonde?
Well, both. But, yeah. Um, you know, 20 years before that, I was working corporate gigs, and quite honestly, I wasn't overjoyed with what I was doing. And I don't know. One day I was sort of sitting there thinking about what to do with life, and I was actually in a Starbucks drinking a hot chocolate. I'd never tasted coffee in my life, and I was 40 at the time. And I thought, I wonder why people are coming here, and I couldn't understand why they were there. They're getting this drink shouted out in their name at high decibels, and I was like, maybe it's because there's nowhere else for them to go. And I mean, I've always been pretty social, and so I thought, I'm going to have a look at this and build a business plan and see if there's any validity behind me starting a business like this. At the time, there didn't seem so many reasons now. So to anybody talking like your friend who's thinking of opening one, times are tough now to open that type of business. 8 years ago when we opened, the economy was decent. 2012, we got through that roller coaster of 08, 09 with the economy, and things were picking up really nicely. Price of oil was good. And I was somewhat ignorant to the impacts that other things could have. But for the first few years, we did really well, and we built the business, a lot of hard work. Yeah, we thrived in it. I mean, you don't make a great deal of money running a business like that, but you sort of it's the enjoyment for me. It's my community. I get to do what I want. Nobody tells me what to do. I get to put music in. I book the artists that I want. So there's a lot of autonomy there that I don't have to worry about. So it's tons of enjoyment. That other things happen over the years. We've had the flood, then we've had, arguably a double dip recession in 2015, and then now we've got COVID, and then probably another recession following up. So it's a wonderful ride. Love doing it. Love the trying to figure out how to keep things going, especially over the last couple of months. If I was to be honest with you, that's probably been the hardest. Maybe the early part of 2015 was a bit harder than this has been, because I wasn't expecting it. This we expected, so it was easy to come to terms with and to adapt really quickly. So probably the early months of 2015, I was like, what the hell is going on? But even though the last 2 months, it's been tough, but it's been very rewarding. So, ultimately, I love what I do. I love the hustle. I love the hard work. And I love being able to do what I want in my business. It's not for everybody unless you really want to lay your life on the line and work hard and be an entrepreneur. Then you shouldn't do it. You put a lot of money at risk as well. But we were lucky to get established early on.
So Andy,
sorry, go ahead, Alan.
I was going to say, Andy, the topics of these podcasts over the past 6 weeks have been about mental health and mental wellness. How have you, because to me, it sounds stressful. You've got 2 little kids, and you're managing a restaurant, and things are really slowing down. What do you do to keep yourself mentally healthy?
That's a good question. I don't know whether I completely have the answer for that. I mean, you and I have talked a lot over the years since we've had the cafe, and you've seen me, especially, I think at 15, you and I went for a walk by the river, and I was like pretty perturbed about the way things were going. And I hadn't really had a break those first few years. But then after that, I managed to start getting a break and really got back to climbing and physical activity, which for me is my bread and butter when it comes from a mental health. I mean, sleep and eating well are obviously two other aspects that you need to look after. But for me, physical activity is the part that really does it for me. That's where I get my buzz. So, yeah, I mean, right now through this, I'll be honest with you, there isn't a lot going on. I mean, I'm working 7 days a week at Inglewood. Some of the time it's on my own, and other times I've got a young lady there with me, but it's just about keeping going. And I think purely through this part of it, it's all about my thinking and where I'm at inside my own head. So it'd be very easy to get down on yourself and worry about stuff. But the thing about this, we're all in it. Nobody's immune to it. Everybody's struggling with it. And I feel somewhat blessed and fortunate for many reasons. One, I can still operate and turn a little bit of revenue, way down on what we were at, but it's still better than nothing. My wife's still working full time. My kids are healthy, and it's not about my exercise or all the other things I'm doing, because I'll be honest with you, I'm dog tired by the time I get home. 51 running around a cafe, you must be nuts. So by the time I come home, I think more than I do. But I think I've become relatively strong mentally. That's what sees me through, and I see the lights at the end of the tunnel for this.
When you said it's like, aside from the exercise, and it's in my head, you said, like, are you talking, how you think yourself through this, the self-talk, almost like CBT?
Yeah. I'm very, like I've said, I'm very blessed. I mean, there's so many people in way worse positions than I'm in, and it hasn't been easy. I'm not trying to sit here and say that this is an easy thing to deal with, and I haven't stressed about it. I totally have. I mean, it's come at a very large financial cost, but I think I'm at the end of that now. So it's all about how I internalize it and how I talk to myself about it. Like I said, if it was just gravity, then maybe I could feel sorry for myself, but it isn't, right? I mean, it's everybody. And as people can't pay their mortgage, I can still pay my mortgage. I can still pay my bills. I can still feed my kids. But and I dare say the majority of us can, but there's still a part of the population out there that are not in that position, and they're worrying, and maybe they don't have jobs to go back to. I have a business to go back to when this is all over, or keep running, and I've got a wife who's still employed. So, I mean, we've got a ton to be grateful for. So it's very easy to be, in my mind, somewhat grounded mentally when it comes to this. Even if I can't get the exercise, or I don't want to do the exercise, or I'm too tired to read a book or what have you, I'm internalizing it in a good way.
With the music at the cafe, because when did you start having the music there? Was it on the weekends originally?
Yeah, so we opened in 2012, and it was always part of the plan. I mean, like, I'm the sole owner, so I didn't really have an idea of how to go about any of this. I'd never really been in this industry, and so we just threw mud at the wall, and it sort of tended to stick at the beginning. We did a Friday night where we would have acts come in, and then we'd have a Saturday night open mic. And then from there we just developed. So we moved it to Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The open mic went by the wayside, and we had 3 nights of acts. Thursday nights being a singer-songwriter with rotating hosts that come in and invite other singer-songwriters in. And then last year I was struggling with Tuesdays and Wednesdays, because we close early on a Sunday and Monday. So we have music Tuesday through Saturday, and I'm struggling with Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And it sort of hit me in the face like a wet fish that I should put music on a Tuesday and Wednesday, because otherwise people aren't going to come. They think you're a music venue in the evenings. So it took me long enough, not the sharpest tool in the shed. So we put music in then as well. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays now we have nights for emerging artists or traveling artists, and mainly emerging and young artists who don't have a place to perform. And we open up the doors to them. And on Thursday, we have the singer-songwriter, which is by invite. And then at the weekends, we have bands more established that charge a cover, and that's how they get paid. So, and I say this is what we've got now. Obviously, we don't have any now. But when we get through this, we'll be putting this back in for sure.
That's really interesting, because it kind of evolved from 2 nights a week to essentially now 6-7 nights a week potentially. Yeah. Do you envision that when things go back to normal, and I say normal, we we don't know when normal is going to be. I mean, the Alberta government said today that they're talking about the next steps and what have you. So when that day finally comes where they say, right, it's all systems go, you can open, and do you see yourself having kind of like a big celebration, a big hurrah, like a party where, I don't know, like, is it going to be like, welcome back to Gravity, here's an awesome act, or?
I'd like to think so, but by all accounts, we're going to struggle to get music in before September. I mean, it's still a little bit vague, and even what they came out with this afternoon doesn't completely, like, the detail needs to be ironed out a little bit, because they're talking about 50% of your capacity for a restaurant or a cafe or a bar. But are you capped by the 15 people that they're talking about can gather? So I don't know the answer to that. So the cafe we've got in Inglewood, or both cafes actually, because the new one in Beltline as well, they're both relatively narrow. So when it comes to seating, if you still need social distancing, and then our seating is going to be pretty sparse. So in my mind now, what I'm gearing up for is a cafe that opens for more than just takeaway and delivery, which is what we're doing now, in mid-May, and becomes a place where you can come and sit and have a cup of coffee on a limited floor plan. And then music comes back later in the year. But I'm saying that with all ignorance. I'm shooting in the dark in a way. So I truly believe that for the summer we become a pure cafe. And we're out in daytime hours, and then when the music comes back, then we go back later into the evening. But who knows? We'll see what comes of it.
I'm really appreciating the British slang here.
That's all I've got.
Just want to quote, hit me in the face like a wet fish. If anybody doesn't know what that means, just YouTube it, Google it. You'll see a video. It's hilarious. And I'm just reading some of the comments here on the video, and it says, should have Julian do some drumming. Maybe you can get the Three Amigos in. I don't know. Maybe we could do that.
I think that's totally cool. Well, actually, I remember one time after the Friday night, we went down to Gravity, and you have some beautiful wood tables in there, and just raw with some raw edges. I don't know if that's the right term or something like that, but the nice wood tables, and there's an act playing, and we're all a bunch of drummers, and we all think we're all a bunch of drummers, and so we come in there. We just like to play, and I don't know if you know anything about Circles of Rhythm and what we do in Inglewood, but we share the neighborhood. We get together on the Friday nights. We get about 120 people on the Friday nights, and we make some noise. We make a beautiful noise, and it's organized chaos. It's a lot of fun, but there's people from all different levels of ability who attend, and it's actually not about the drumming. It's more so about the heart connection, the community component, the energy that we can create together, the space, the shared space. So anyways, we came into your spot, and there was an act playing, and we grabbed some spoons, and we're making some noise with that, and we started joining in with the band, and they, the energy lifted, and people really got into it, and so my question to you is, since bringing in the musical component, or I guess you kind of see that polarity, right, of when there's no music and it's just your straight up coffee shop,
Yeah.
restaurant, and then you have a musical component, an act. Do you notice a shift in terms of in yourself, but also in terms of who the energy that you see in the room, how people respond to either or, and can you describe that?
Sure. So let's go back to that person's comment first. If you guys want to come in and do a drum circle the first week we open music back up, let's do it. All right.
Awesome.
So there's the first one. I can't back out of that one now. Alan has asked me in the past. We've never got there, but yes, let's do it.
It's a verbal agreement on video now,
There you
buddy.
go. I suppose it's going to be on YouTube or something now, hey?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So going back to your question, absolutely. Music at Gravity is like a labor of love. I love it. It's a wonderful thing to have. I never want to stop doing it. It doesn't always bring financial gain, but there are the odd nights that do, and for that I'm very grateful. But what it does is it totally changes the aura of the cafe. I got to be careful because you get the right band or act in there with the right ambience and people watching, and the financial gain is irrelevant. I just look and I'm like, this makes me so proud to own this place and to have opened it. These are the moments that make me smile, because of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing and the level of ambience in there.
Describe to me, and if you will, what do you see? Describe what you see.
Okay, so from an audience perspective, what I love is when it becomes a listening room. When people are there and they're purely there and engrossed in the music. I'm not a musician or an artist in any way, shape, or form, but I can only think that from an artist perspective, that is glorious to them. That everybody's there and they're intently listening to everything they're doing. So from that perspective, I love that connection. The type of music in there, depending on who the act is, how they're communicating, and when we dim the lights and just seeing the joy on people's faces. I'll give you, there's a couple of examples. So Alan knows a couple of these people. So there's a fellow called Benjamin Longman, who's a local singer-songwriter. In my mind, and from my humble opinion, the best singer-songwriter that has never made it. So that's how I describe him, because I just think he's wonderful. And you can have him in there and you can have 50 people and they're just listening to him. And he commands the room on his own, just him and his guitar. And he's just like Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits. He's a fantastic guitarist. So you'll get a room of people just watching him, and he commands the room all on his own.
And he's truly a multi-instrumentalist too. Like he plays the guitar, he'll play a drum, and then he'll grab the cello, he'll play a cello, he'll play the keyboard.
Yeah, it is amazing. And then you'll have a group like I'm the Mountain. There's a fellow called Colton O'Reilly. He's a school teacher, and he fronts the band called I'm the Mountain. And sometimes there's 7 of them playing, and it's totally different to Ben, obviously, because of the amount of them. But you'll have a guy on a trombone with one hand and on the keyboards on the other, and I don't know. It's just the ambience that it sets and the type of music. It's great for soul and funk and jazz. I mean, the lights all dim, that type of thing. So, it's an hard one to put your finger onto exactly what it is, because then I can have other groups who come in and do exactly the same, but I don't feel the same. And whether it's because of the genre of the music or what it is, I'm not 100% sure. But, when I walk in there and there's music and there's people listening, it sort of warms the cockles of my heart, as we say.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought it down to the heart, because that's essentially what we're trying to achieve, is to, when we do this drumming circle thing, is you know, as a non-musician, witnessing a musical act and being able to see what's happening on the outside. Our goal is to help participants who come to the drumming experience what it's like to be part of the band, right? And it sounds like what you're creating in Gravity is, and you capture it, sometimes not, sometimes you do,
Yeah.
is where people are immersed into that experience, you know, and there's a connection, there's a deeper connection, and that's what you know, that's what keeps you going. It sounds like it's not the financial gain of having an artist come in. It's more so bringing people together, creating an immersive experience that means something, right? That connects at the heart.
And I think to that point, that music in Calgary is pretty tough to get people out to live shows. Now I say that with all ignorance to how it is in other cities, but apparently, I mean, you go to places in the southern states, and granted, patio weather, summer, warmer weather, you know, people tend to get out. The music's on the street and that type of thing. But it's been a real interesting journey for music here, with the way that we've gone over the last 8 years. So many peaks and valleys, but ultimately, all I can do is open up the doors to musicians, and then provide the space, provide the service and the product, and then it's sort of up to how the musician performs and interacts, and the people that come and watch. A lot of the people that come because they know the musician. And it makes me sad in a way, because there's some really talented people in this city, but they won't go. Or as a population, most of us won't go and watch somebody that we haven't heard or we don't know. You know, so it's a real conundrum, and it's pretty sad, because you can throw a $5 cover or a $10 cover on the door, and people will come to the door, and this is how the musicians get paid at the weekend, but they won't come in because there's that cover. And I don't know, I find it really strange, and I get it. I mean, it's people's hard-earned money. They don't want to just be throwing it at anything, but you know, some of the music we have is absolutely wonderful.
Oh, and I can attest to that, Andy.
Yeah.
A number of the musicians that have played at Gravity have, you know, subsequent to being at Gravity and listening to them, they've come to the hospital and have volunteered on our unit for the patients.
Yeah.
And I think there's a spirit of generosity that's inherent both in yourself and the musicians. And you give the musicians a great opportunity, who might not have that. They might not have that opportunity to play in front of a live audience. And I think some of the most, I mean, that's how I found out about Ben Longman, was by coming down and hearing at Gravity, or Evan Freeman. I don't know if anybody's ever heard Evan Freeman, but if you ever get a chance to hear this man play live, and interestingly enough, Ben Longman sometimes plays with Evan Freeman.
Yeah.
We saw them at Gravity first, and then at the King Eddie, and then again at and it's not like we're groupies or anything, but then again at the Engineered Air Theater. And I think it's nice to know too, and maybe people don't know this, but when the musicians play at Gravity, they get 100% of the door.
90.
90?
Don't make me sound out to be a saint.
Well, still 90%. I mean, that's
Yeah.
I mean, that is so good.
Yeah.
I don't
You
know,
know, it's a real tough one. It's a conundrum, because you guys are all musicians, and you obviously have to practice, and it's not lost on me how much energy, time, and effort you have to put in to hone in your craft. So when people come and there's no crowd, I want to crawl in a hole. You know, it's really horrible to see that, because these are guys that have come, and it happens to everybody. I mean, Ben's played there and it's been really slow. It's horrible to see. But as a cafe owner, I mean, some of the fiscal side of things are pretty hard to deal with. So you can't just say to musicians, come play, here's a chunk of money. It just doesn't work that way. So it really is a tough conundrum for me to wrap my head around. And that's why we put in the Tuesday, Wednesday. So for the up and coming artists and those that are traveling that don't have people who follow them right now, then they can come, they can play, and they can earn some tips. They don't get paid, but those guys that play at the weekend, those are the guys that make their money through door and cover. But I think we've got the best balance that we can possibly have right now. If it was up to me, I'd give everybody $1 million to come and play, but obviously that's not going to happen. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a labour of love, but it's something that'll never go away. It's I would say it's more deep rooted in gravity than the coffee side, if I was to be honest.
Yeah, if that's the case, Andy, if that's what you're offering, count the Three Amigos in for
$1 million.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There must be bucks somewhere in the world that are worthless, right?
Oh, have to be, have to be. Yeah, I've been to Gravity twice, and the first time I went there was when it was the night that you were talking about, Julian. It was that night, and it was just everything about it. I'd never been in a coffee shop, stroke kind of, you could have a beer, stroke music. I just found it amazing. Then the act came on, and it did set, like, it was a certain ambience about it, and I felt really relaxed, and I was really intrigued, and so I had that experience. I really did. So I can totally attest to what you guys are saying. But thinking back, since you've had the Gravity, since you've had that in Inglewood since day one, has there been like a night specifically where everything has just clicked and it's just been the most memorable night that you've experienced, and you just thought, this is why I do it? Has there been one of those nights?
There's been a few of them, and actually there's a couple of funny stories behind them. One of them was I'm the Mountain were playing, and there's also a fella, I think Rubino. I think they played together. Rubino opened for I'm the Mountain. It was my wife's birthday, and we were slightly over capacity. You can cut that out, but it was really, really memorable that night. It was also in spring. Now here's the other, and I'll go back to your same question, but here's the other thing: you get shows in spring and fall and winter, and at 8 o'clock there's a totally different feeling than if the show's in the summer at 8 o'clock, because it's so light outside. And I mean, we dim the lights. We have a couple of standing lights as well that we put either side of the band. But if you put the same show in the middle of summer, totally different. The feeling's different. It's so weird. But so that's one. We had another one on my birthday. We had a flood in there at the same time. So the music was on. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. The music was going. It was a full house, and I kept having this pipe flood. So I was beside myself. But at the end of it, apart from a couple of wet handbags, everything was good. The music was fantastic. And again, the same feeling. You're just there, and at the end of the night, you're just like, this is tremendous. It's the act that does that. I can provide the same room 5 nights a week, 50 weeks of the year, to 250 acts, but it's totally the act that creates the ambience in the room. Obviously, the lighting helps a little bit, but there's been a few of them, and they are very, very memorable, those nights. And then when you have the days where you have a foot of snow and nobody comes in, and you're fretting about money, I always think back to those nights that for the reason why I do it.
So funny that you say, the memorable nights, and it's so funny because on a Friday night, for me anyway, as a facilitator, the most memorable nights is not the facilitators, it's the participants. So it's not the facilitators. So at the cafe, it's the performers. It's the people that show up and drum with us, and those are the nights that are most memorable. So it's funny how the two are very similar, but just totally backwards at the same time. It's so so funny.
Yeah. I mean, we can provide a space and service and product, but ultimately, like, the musician makes the note, and that's the beautiful thing about it. And I added on to that, you see that over the years, you've seen these musicians come to Gravity, and it's like a stepping stone. It's the beginning for some of these guys, right? And then initially, it was like I'd drive past the Ironwood on the way home, and I'd see somebody who played at Gravity on the Ironwood. I'd be like, "Ooh!" And then I'm like, "Hang on a second, that's exactly what I should be doing. I'm a feeder to places like the Ironwood, to the Blues Can, to the National Music Centre. If you can come to Gravity and ply your trade, then of course you want to move on to better things, right? And maybe the Ironwood is a stepping stone for somebody on their second step going somewhere, maybe nationally, or that. I heard a young lady on the radio. Alan, you must know her. What the hell's her name now? She lived out east of Calgary. She used to have a feather in her hair when she played. She's now in Nashville. I can't remember her name now, but she's down in Nashville recording an album, and she was on CBC the other day. Remember her name?
Well. You say, Andy, they move on to better things, and I disagree, man. I think they move on to bigger things.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
they don't move on to better things, because I've seen people at Gravity that play big venues that come back to Gravity with 20 or 30 people in the audience.
Yeah.
And there's still that same, it's like some, it's Tom York from Radiohead showing up at some little pub in England and doing a solo show. I think there's a lot of value in that, and I think the better things are the little places, because man, you're sitting 2 feet from the musician, and from a spectator or a listening perspective, a listener's perspective, it feels so intimate. And I think that's what I like about Gravity, and that's what I like about the drum circles, the way Julian and John facilitate them. You feel like you're a part of the show. You feel it's an intimate experience. I remember a place when I was living in Australia. We used to go to this little pub. It was called the Rest, and it was on the North Shore. So we had to take the train across to the Rest Hotel. And there was a singer named Pat Drummond, and he would just stand in the corner with his guitar, and there were no chairs, and everybody just stood. And it was like this every Friday night, just chock-a-block, where you could not move. And it was just so much energy, and you just felt it's almost like the Borg, you feel you're a part of this continuum that was so nice. And I think when Gravity is really rocking some nights, it feels like that, but also when Gravity's intimate, it feels like that.
Yeah.
There's so many places in the UK that have most of the bigger bands have started off in a very similar environment to Gravity. If you think about it, like you think of the the Beatles and Oasis, and they were playing in front of audiences of like 20, 25 people. So I think what you have here is really unique. Have you ever had like someone come in and then have gone on to bigger things? Like, is there anyone like standout that you can think of?
No, I think the girl, I wish I could remember her name now.
The girl with the feather in her hair.
Yeah. As soon as we hang up on this, I'm sure I'm going to remember her name. She's a country singer. She's in Nashville. She's the one that stands out.
You can text it to me after, and I'll put a comment on the video after, and it'll be totally fine. So don't bother yourself over it. I think it goes beyond just the listener's experience, like Alan was saying, and like you're saying, Andy. But there's a reason why artists who have had, like Alan used the example of Tom York, who have had their debut in smaller venues. I think everybody really has had that progression, that natural progression as a musician. But they come back to those smaller spaces because of that level of intimacy, And intimacy, if you break it down, it's into me, you see. Having speaking to thousands of people, you have to speak on a very general basis. But when you're speaking to 20 people in a room, or 50 people in a room, or 10, or whatever it might be, you can speak quite more personally, and it's more of a conversation. It's more of a relationship where there's a reciprocity, and you can almost pick out the energy. And I just want to step back for a second, and I know that, Andy, you're saying, you know, it's the musician, it's the acts. I can't take any credit for it. You're a very humble person, and I love meeting people who are humble like you. And humility is a great quality, but I think you also need to be able to take a little bit of ownership on that too, because it sounds like you're very intuitive in the same way, because you're intuitive in the sense when you described that, you know, I put a little bit of lights here, I dim the lights here, and there's a different feel when the same act, but it's in the summertime and it's brighter outside, and in the wintertime you're essentially feeling into these spaces, and you're facilitating, you're creating a space. And this is things that most people don't notice because they're immersed into the experience, but those small fine tunings are what makes, in my opinion, the world of a difference. That's what makes the difference between a place where you just walk in and you listen to music and you leave and you're like, we went to live music, or a space where you walk in and you say, I was part of something. I became part of something important. Something important happened there, and I'm part of that now. So I think you need to give yourself some credit, and it's not lost effort, because I've experienced those from both sides, as a musician and as a listener. And I think it's those, when you walk into a space where people actually value creating a safe space, a place where people can experience something greater than themselves. I think that's a very unique thing.
I do agree with you, but I do have a rebuttal too. So when we first started this, I was telling you about, you know, I can do what I want when I want. Nobody tells me what to do. I can change things as I see fit. That's the beauty of it. And I am relatively intuitive when it comes to that. I mean, we do. I mean, even, and I'm not going to go into the details, but through these last couple of months, we've done a lot of intuitive stuff to try and entice people to come by or call us for delivery, that type of thing. But and that's what I sort of had to do with the music to some extent. However, it is the talent that pulls it all together. So I could do the same thing and bring in musical acts that are left wanting as for an audience, and not have it successful. So I appreciate the kind words, but I do put a lot of effort into it. But it's effort worth it to have, as John said, those nights that are really, really memorable. And that's all I can offer. But it's when people come and enjoy it, and the feedback that we get that really, really makes it for me. But I must show you my T-shirt, because I want this guy. This is the guy that I want to play.
Oh yeah.
And
Totally.
if you're watching, Ray, which you're probably not, give us a call, will you?
Totally. We'll pack the place.
That would be great.
Everybody listening to this now and viewing this, just comment Ray Le Montage, and he'll see like about 20 people tagging him to this video.
But just make sure it's Ray LaMontagne.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Ray LaMontagne. Yes.
Yeah. Funnily enough, you were talking earlier, Alan, about mental health. Music's a large part of mental health for me. I mean, even now, my playlist at the cafe, I was there working alone today, and I've put on a playlist, and it makes my day way better. It's full of music that I like. And as silly as it may seem, if I had a different playlist on, my day would have been fine, but it just brightens my day, lifts me up, you know. So even recorded music that I'm playing now through COVID is having that opportunity to just lighten my mood, and while I'm at the cafe, just brightens the day.
I think there's something. I think music is in our genes. There's some evidence and discussion amongst evolutionary biologists that we had music before we had language, and it was the development of music that gave us language. And many languages are very all language is rhythmical, but the tonal languages are almost musical.
Yeah.
But so I think it it has that effect on everybody, whether or not we acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And I think allowing ourselves to get in touch and um, be aware and really hold on to the benefits that music bring us.
Mm.
Interestingly, I find that during times like this, we realize not just with music but the arts in general how they're such an integral part of society,
Mm.
and yet it it's what gets cut the first in an economic downturn.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine a night without Netflix. Imagine a night without music or working this evening with your tunes in. Imagine a night or a day without the arts present in your life in some capacity.
Mm.
And I think if we imagine it honestly, we should never ever again complain about having to pay a cover charge in Gravity, or having to pay $15 to see a movie, or
$15 to come to the drum circle.
$15 to come to the drum circle. Absolutely, because it is that important to us.
Mm. Ironically enough, I was having this thought over the last couple of days. So I love sport. I'm not missing sport at all. But if you told me I couldn't play music, I would call you daft. Like I wouldn't be able to do that. Imagine standing in a cafe all day making coffee without music on.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I'm not missing sport at all. It's the weirdest thing because I mean I'm 51 and I've loved sport my whole life, and then like I couldn't care less about sport right now. And I feel the same about TV too. There's so much crap on there, but you can put. I mean, and music's obviously just like anything else in the world is very. It's very personal, and you'll like some and not others, and what have you. And I was listening to a song today. God, what's his name? Ben Howard. He's English, right? From Plymouth, I think, somewhere around there. And it's the end of an affair, and it's the most morose song you could possibly put on, but it's wonderfully written. And I'm listening to it and reading the words, and I'm like, this is a great song, but like you'd think it would be a bit of a downer, wouldn't you? But
Yeah.
like it's just different. But also going back to your point earlier about musicians in England and playing in small venues. I don't know whether you've seen this week, but there's been a lot of gigs where established musicians have done gigs online to support local music places. And I've been very lucky to be able to keep Gravity open all the way through this. But there's places like the Ironwood and the Blues Can and Mickey's on 12th and others that I wonder if there could be a movement where there could be some local artists that could help them. Because I can't imagine, for example, Pat at the Ironwood. I mean, he's got all the Blues Can. They've got absolutely no way of bringing in any revenue. They've got nothing that they can offer during this time.
And
I've been thinking about that.
Ones to reopen, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
you know, I don't know who I could talk to, or I mean, it's all in the news in England. There's been some really heavy hitters doing some gigs over there, some benefit gigs.
yeah.
I know there's a pub in Huddersfield that somebody did one for last week, and they raised a fortune for them. And I somewhat think it might be necessary here.
Well, are you part of the Music Mile in Inglewood?
Yeah. I think that's probably my starting point, because we got a couple of real. Actually, they both got nominated for an award and received an award from the mayor in the last couple of weeks. So
yeah.
Meg Ran Rosendahl and Bob Chartier, they'd probably be the first place to start. But I sort of think that might be something that we might need to do for the music venues that are pure music venues, not Gravity, because I mean we're still running, but it might be a nice thing to look at.
I think that's a nice shout out for Bob Chartier too.
Yeah.
This is. Do you guys know Bob, Julian, and John?
You know, not as well as I should. So tell me more.
He's an Inglewood resident.
He's and he got into music as in his retirement years, and taught himself to play guitar, write songs, and perform. And he started performing at Gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the embodiment of that generosity of spirit that musicians seem many musicians seem to have.
Mm.
And I think, Andy, you were fairly instrumental in the development of the Music Mile, weren't you?
Um, I, I, just like I'm a music venue, people came and talked about it there, so it really took off there. But mainly because of Bob's vigor. He did a road trip down to Nashville and Austin, and then came back and said, "We need somewhere for musicians." We sat and talked about it, and then Meg, who has got a history of putting things together like this, got involved, and then it sort of spiraled from there. And it's stuttered, and it's gone along, and it does need. I don't know what it needs, but it does need a bit of a boost. I think it needs a bit of a boost from the city or from Alberta tourism or Calgary tourism or something like that, just to give it a helping hand. But it's a wonderful initiative. I don't know. It would be wonderful to have a Calgary French Quarter, or you go down to San Antonio and you see down around the Riverwalk all these musicians, or in in Austin. I don't know. There just seems to be invisible barriers that I don't really know that sort of prevent this. So I'm not sure how far it goes, but it's the idea and the generosity of time that people are putting in is wonderful. Mm-hmm. Talking of which, Al, Nancy LaBerge, remember her?
Yep.
She just sent me a message as we're talking. That's quite ironic.
Nancy's in Backyard Betties, isn't she?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you guys ever get a chance to hear have you heard the Backyard Betties?
Honestly, I haven't, and I'm not very good with names, but I think what we need to do is, between the two of you, Andy and Alan, you guys need to write down all these artists' names so the people watching can find these artists. And these are local artists in Calgary and around, right? And I think that's beautiful. I have a question, Andy. Like, if I was a musician who's been a basement musician and I've been just playing for a long time, but it's been a part of, for me, a mental health thing, and it's been helpful for me. But I'm wanting to kind of step into sharing my gift with other people.
Yeah.
How would one get involved with Gravity?
So a friend of mine who I met through Gravity many years ago started a music platform called Stagehand, and imagine. It's an Airbnb for musicians and music venues. So it's a database that collects venues, artists, and then puts them together so they can book shows together. So on my website, cafegravity.com, there's an actual link that says play here or perform here. And then you can go in and it shows you the different levels of what we do: Tuesday, Wednesday, then Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday. They're all sort of the different setups that we have. And then you create a profile, which you feel like you're creating it on my website, but you're not. You're doing it actually on Stagehand. And then you add some music, and then you look at my profile, look what dates are open, flip me a request. I listen to your music. If I like it, I book you. If I don't, I don't. That's pretty much the way it goes, right?
There you go.
I mean, I can't be more honest than that, right? So I'm the filter, right? So,
and that's okay.
I want to book everybody, but I can't.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to your comment about, yes, it's part me, but obviously you can't book bad acts and expect to have an immersive experience where everybody gets connected to their hearts. Sometimes you just need to practice a little bit longer, or continue to just play for yourself, and that's okay. I think I've played in many Battle of the Bands in my day, and like just things like where you see multiple acts in a short amount of time, and I think there's lots of different avenues, but maybe Gravity isn't one of those. That's
But, I mean, the beautiful thing is Tuesdays and Wednesdays, like I said, are set aside for those people who are new or they're traveling. And unless they're musicians who okay, so step back a second. You've got musicians who are in it and they want to maximize their revenue when they come and do a gig. You've got other musicians who are like, yeah, I'd like to make some money, but I'm happy. And then you've got others who just want to play, you know. I mean, maybe there's more levels or buckets than that. But Gravity is more of a place, if you want to come on a Tuesday or Wednesday, you've never played before. I mean, it's very relaxed. I mean, we say do 2 hours, but if you can't do 2 hours, then so be it. But it's a place to really give it a shot and ply that trade. And I don't book bad acts for those days, but I'm probably a little bit more lenient, especially if you haven't got a lot of material to fall back on to show me. Than I am for booking people on Fridays and Saturdays. Because if you're going to get a good crowd, it's going to be on a Friday and a Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't been in your new location on the Beltline. Are you booking acts on both locations or just the one in Inglewood?
So right now we're not booking anything, obviously.
Wow, of course,
We cancelled everything. But just before this started, we just put in music, I think actually it was the beginning of March. So I think we had a week where we had a couple of acts come in. And the plan was to do Fridays and Saturdays for a few months just to see. I was sort of struggling to get 5 acts a week in Inglewood. And I couldn't quite understand why. And I was questioning whether it was me. And then I realized this was the first January and February that we'd actually had 5 nights, because last year it was only 3. So I didn't want to go full hog at the new location until we'd figured out whether we could attract enough crowds at the weekends. The evenings there, it's weird. You'd think a 5-minute drive from Inglewood, you could have another cafe and you'd get the same ambience and the same level of people coming through the door. Huge mistake, like, to think that. I mean, like, it's a wonderful cafe, but so different to Inglewood. I was very naive. I thought it would just about open the doors and it'd be just the same as Inglewood, but it's not the same.
There's definitely a different feel everywhere. You know, just like the seasons bring a different energy to your shows. You know, neighborhoods. Inglewood's it's got quite some charm, and we really are grateful for being able to set up on the Friday nights. We're getting close to the ends, and I've got a question I like to ask a question for all the participants on the call. And Andy, I'm going to start with you. If you were able to pick up any instrument or musical thing, you know, anything that is relative, so it could be recording, it could be, you know, production, whatever it might be. If you were able to pick something up tomorrow and be a master at it, what would it be, and who would you play with or play for, and where would be your first venue?
I think it would have to be the guitar. I've had a love-hate relationship with the guitar for years, and I've got a lovely Taylor guitar. I can see it from here. And all I do is once a month, my alarm goes off on my phone and I put water in the humidifier. I can't play a chord on it, and it's been sitting there. And I'm kidding myself now, because I think that one day I'll play it, but I'm really saving it for the children. So that would be the instrument that I hope one day to play. Although I've been recently thinking about the piano, but what's the point of the piano when you can't even pick up your guitar, right? And then, I mean, some people are meant to listen to music, and that's me. But if I was to play guitar, who would I play it with? I think it would have to be the Lumineers, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've seen them twice in concert, and they're my last concert I went to in Detroit in November. And that lead singer is something else. In fact, they all are. Everybody who plays in that band. So they just look like they were having fun. And that when I have guys and girls who come to Gravity and they look like they're having fun, then that's the pinnacle for me, is seeing them smile, enjoy themselves, dance, converse with the audience, and just have a great old time. And that, I mean, that's in itself is a walk into mental health for you, right? So these guys were dancing barefoot on stage in Little Caesars Arena in Detroit with, like, I don't know, 30,000 people watching them. And I standing there with guitar, I probably look like a right lemon, but it would be a great thing to do. I don't know, and maybe one day if I could pull out a tune in Gravity one day with somebody playing the guitar, that would work too.
You know what we're gonna do is after we end this live stream, we're gonna do a little bit of CBT with you, and we're gonna find out what's getting in the way of you picking up the guitar.
You're looking at it. It's right here.
John, you're next. What instrument?
Goodness. Oh my word! I feel like I need more time. I've always wanted to play the piano, just like Elton John. I could listen to Elton John all day. I really could. Would I play
sing as well? Or
oh yeah, I would sing as well.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. I do the whole no chair with my feet.
Rocket Man style?
Rocket Man style, yeah. Would I play with Elton John? Even if I was amazing, he'd probably still make me look like a silly Billy, so I probably wouldn't play with him. But I think I would play. Oh my gosh, this is so tough. It'd have to be Mumford and Sons.
Yeah,
I play with them, and it would have to be in my hometown. It would have to be at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff.
This is great.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I just made it up.
That's brilliant. Yeah, Alan, what about you, bud?
Well, I like obscure instruments. And I'm drawn to one obscure instrument called a hurdy-gurdy.
I think this is the hurdy and this is the gurdy.
I thought it was two girls. One girl was her name was Hurdy and the other girl was Gertie. And...
Do you know the hurdy-gurdy?
No.
Does anybody know it? It actually
I'm gonna Google it.
It predates the violin. You've heard it in movies. You've watched what series did they play the hurdy-gurdy on? Like Bear McCreary, he did the soundtrack. You know Bear McCreary?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well check out Bear McCreary as well. Anyway, he incorporates the hurdy-gurdy into a lot of his soundtrack for movies. It's just everybody who, if anybody's watching this, just Google what a hurdy-gurdy is. So I'm drawn to those type of instruments. But if there was one instrument that I could I just love it. I think it's my solo instrument, and that's the cello.
Mm.
And if I could, I just absolutely melt when I hear somebody playing the cello beautifully.
Mm.
And I would play it with, do you know the band Elbow?
Yeah.
I'd play with Elbow. Yeah, that's a hurdy-gurdy. And it's got drone strings on it. So I'll go back to Elbow. I'd play with Elbow or Radiohead.
Nice.
Nice.
What about
Hey,
you?
I remember the name of that singer now. Her name was Sycamore.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember her, Al?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We were there for her.
Yeah. She started playing there like 8 years ago. Now she lives in Nashville recording albums.
No way.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
What about you, Julian? I'm really intrigued to hear yours.
I don't think I've got as Alan always throws some random stuff out there. I just like I'm still just wondering how that hurdy-gurdy sounds. But for me, I think I would. I'm just gonna cop out, and I'm just gonna say I would love to be able to sing, just like flawlessly. I have I enjoy singing, but I don't enjoy singing in front of other people. I know that I shouldn't anyways. That's probably more so what it is. And so if I could sing and like just have perfect pitch and passion behind it, I think that would be the thing. And if I could play or sing with a band, oh my goodness. That's a tough one. Because if you're joining a band, you don't want to take away from their show, right? You just want to be part of it, right? So I'd just start my own. It would just
No.
No, no.
Fine. I think it would be with Muse. Do you guys know the
Yes!
band Muse?
Oh yeah.
I could totally see you with Muse.
Yeah. It would be with Muse, and like melodramatic, operatic, like end of the world, post-apocalyptic.
Shit, yeah, they need a hurdy-gurdy
They
too.
do.
If I could join in on that, that would be a lot of fun.
John, going back to your point about Elton John, there's a fella in Inglewood who actually lives very close to the Inglewood Community Centre, called Rob Skeet, and he does an Elton John tribute concert. And he did 2 at Gravity last year, and then he moved up and started doing them at the Ironwood, and he packed the place.
It's insane.
Yeah,
what
fantastic.
he does.
Yeah,
This guy's got every Elton John song memorized, and he doesn't take a break. He doesn't stop. He just goes. I mean, he takes a break after an hour and a half or whatever, but he will play 20 songs in a set nonstop, and he puts the clothes on and everything.
mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's amazing. I'd love to check that out.
Yeah, he'll be playing again. He just did at the weekend. He just did a concert from his house. He's got a recording studio in his basement, and did a concert from his house, like a pub concert. He does a lot of East Coast stuff, and then the week before he did an Elton John tribute concert. So he's very popular. But I'm sure he'll be back at the Ironwood, and he'd be a great guy to do some sort of benefit concert for one of those venues. So we'll let you know when he's playing next.
That sounds good.
That's great. Well, I think any last thoughts, Alan? You were going to say something. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off.
So we're going to end the stream here, but gentlemen, we can keep chatting afterwards. This is where the conversation always,
it
happens
does.
to get, more.
I feel like we should do like an after episode.
Post?
Yeah, when you're the Walking Dead, and you have like the program afterwards.
Well, I mean,
I feel like we should have another one.
People would need to pay extra money for that. So what's 100% more of $0?
Well, I've never gone an hour without swearing before, so we'll do that after.
There you go.
Maybe we can call it the 3 Here We Goes.
And the one here begun.
All right, everybody. Say goodbye to everyone tuning in. Thanks for coming in.
See ya.
See you guys.
Thank you.
See you guys.